An APD officer is fighting for his life after an undercover drug bust went haywire and one officer opened fire on another. It happened outside a crowded McDonald's on Central near Tramway around 11:30 yesterday. The action centered around this black Lexus. Sources tell us two undercover officers were inside the car conducting a drug buy with two suspects. After the buy, one of the officers gave a signal for backup to swoop in and make the arrests. Those backup undercover officers were in the pickup trucks you see, but something went wrong, and for some reason, one of the backup officers who moved in started firing his weapon, hitting an officer who was in the Lexus. An emotional Chief Eden confirmed just how serious it is.
Today, during an undercover narcotics operation, an undercover Albuquerque Police Department detective was shot. The preliminary investigation shows that the detective was shot by another Albuquerque Police Department officer.
APD also confirmed a second officer who was inside the car was also injured, but did not say how she was hurt. One of those officers was rushed to UNM Hospital in critical condition yesterday. There has not been an update on his condition. The two drug suspects were arrested at the scene. Chief Eden would not say if either of them had a gun or what prompted the officer to fire his weapon. APD has not released the names of the two suspects. A Rio Arriba County deputy was across the street at a grocery store with his wife when the shooting happened. He tells News 13 what he witnessed and what it's like for law enforcement putting their lives on the line each day.
I heard at least three. There might have been more. I heard at least three, just, pop, pop, pop. I go to work every day and I tell my wife, that I love her, and I tell my boys that because you never know. You never know when stuff's going to happen. I think about it every day when I get in my police unit, and I make sure that I have the equipment that I have to to protect myself if I need to.
Coming up in our next half hour, we'll hear from witnesses who saw the aftermath of the shooting. As always, you can see more on this story on KRQE.com. Santa Fe police are pouring through source surveillance video in hopes of finding a man behind a scary mugging. Deputies say a woman went to this Allsups on Agua Fria Road Wednesday night and paid for her stuff with a $100 bill. Deputies think someone was watching her and followed her, then held her up in her own driveway.
She starts to get out of her car. He approaches her. She still has the keys in the ignition. He reaches in and actually takes the keys out of the ignition, physically takes the keys out of the ignition. At that point, he then tells her, "Give me all you've got." She gives him the money. He then gives her the keys back and he runs off.
Allsups employees told investigators the suspect description matched a customer in the store at the same time that the victim was there. Well, this city bus driver is at home this morning recovering from Thursday's crash into a home. She's a bit bruised, but doing okay. The 5 passengers on that bus also had minor injuries. Police say the driver of a van ran a red light, hitting the bus. The bus then slammed into the living room of a house on Cole and Girard, throwing a young woman from her couch. ABQ Rides said it's not clear yet if the bus in this crash is totaled.
And the city will likely go after the insurance of both of the drivers that ran those red lights.
That's also the case for this crash, the other city bus crash that was last Friday at Central and Unser. A truck ran a red light, smashing into the bus. The bus then slammed into a sign, and the driver was nearly thrown through the windshield. That driver is okay. A man is dead after a hit and run in Santa Fe. It happened at 11:30 Thursday night on Airport Road near San Felipe Road. Police say Ezra Hotniel Alvarez Lira hit Michael Soto and then fled. Alvarez was found nearby where he admitted to hitting the pedestrian. Investigators believe he was drunk. He's charged with vehicular homicide. New Mexico State Police are investigating a fatal accident this morning. They say it happened just after 8:30 last night at mile marker 178 just south of Belen. Both north and southbound lanes were shut down overnight. Police on scene told us there was a middle-aged female involved. Stay with KRQE on air and online as this story develops. American and French investigators are digging into the backgrounds of those responsible for the terror attacks in and around Paris. This morning, we're learning more about the people at the center of what some fear was a terror cell. Chris Van Cleve has more.
In the hours after their violent end, evidence is emerging that the three dead French terrorists knew each other. Prosecutors are aware of more than 500 phone calls between the girlfriend of grocery store gunman Amady Coulibaly and the wife of one of the Kawashi brothers. Coulibaly claimed during a phone interview with a French TV network he coordinated his attack with the Kawashi brothers. All three claim links to terror groups, and the Associated Press is reporting Coulibaly and Sharif Kawashi were both suspects in a 2010 terrorism investigation that never went to trial. The two men reportedly became friends while behind bars. In 2008, Sharif was convicted for his ties to a terror network. Yemeni security officials say his older brother Saeed trained with al-Qaeda and possibly fought for the extremist group in southern Yemen. The brothers were on the U.S. no-fly list.
Al-Qaeda du Yemen.
In a phone interview, Sharif Kawashi said he was on a mission for al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Late Friday, that group posted a video praising the brothers' attack on Charlie Hebdo and claimed responsibility. But during his phone interview, Coulibaly claimed he was serving ISIS, not al-Qaeda. Police are still searching for his girlfriend, who is considered a suspect in the attacks. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News.
U.S. intelligence officials say they have found no co-conspirators or threats linked to the French suspects. Key French government officials will meet today to discuss the aftermath of the attacks in Paris. The Kawashi brothers may have been inspired by a New Mexico-born terrorist. CBS News has learned Saeed spent several months in Yemen training with a branch of al-Qaeda that was being run by radical Las Cruces-born Yemeni cleric Anwar al-Awlaki. A man purporting to be Sharif called a French TV station yesterday claiming that he was financed by al-Awlaki. Al-Awlaki was killed in 2011 in a U.S. drone strike. The State Department has issued a global travel warning to U.S. citizens traveling overseas in the wake of those recent terror attacks in France, Australia, and Canada. Well, new this morning, recovery teams have raised the tail section of missing AirAsia Flight 8501 from the Java Sea. Flight data recorders for this make of jet are housed in the tail, but investigators say they did not find those black box recorders. This flight disappeared on December 28th with 162 people on board. So far, 48 bodies have been recovered from the wreckage. An Albuquerque police officer is fighting for his life this morning, the victim of friendly fire. An emotional police chief addressed reporters yesterday.
Both officers involved were working in plain clothes and in an undercover capacity, and both officers been with the department for many years.
It was just after 11:30 yesterday morning when APD says one officer shot a fellow undercover detective in the parking lot of the McDonald's on Central near Tramway. Chief Eden says they were trying to arrest two men on drug charges when the shooting took place. Police have not said yet if the suspects pulled a gun on officers or if they even had a weapon. They're still investigating how many shots were fired. The two suspects were taken into custody. Names of all of the players involved have not been released. Well, this all happened in a very busy area, and a lot of people watched the chaos unfold. News 13's Liz Mitri tracked down some of those witnesses and talked with them. She has their stories.
I was laying in bed and I heard gunshots.
Destiny Jackson and her brother Tyler were at the Travelodge overlooking the McDonald's on Central near Tramway.
I heard yelling and I looked out the window and I just seen a bunch of guys with masks on. I thought maybe McDonald's was getting robbed or something. I didn't know what was going on.
A lot of people were confused about the commotion. There's motel after motel, a Waffle House, and other popular businesses surrounding the scene where people saw bits and pieces of what APD says was a drug bust gone wrong. An officer who shot one of their own. This man was inside the McDonald's.
They surrounded this vehicle so it could not back up and escape. And then at that point, then the shots happened.
There was an officer on the ground and there was 4 other officers cutting his shirt off and stuff like that.
Tyler says he heard them talking to the wounded officer.
2 of the officers kept telling him to stick around, that he wasn't going to die, to hang in there, that he'll be all right, hang in there, he'll be all right.
There were some people that were not in uniform stopping traffic. Ambulance came in. They had that McDonald's all flagged off probably within about 5 minutes. It was really fast.
Destiny took us to the balcony where she saw it all.
Right here, I stood up and I got a chair and I could see over.
She says she's shocked and relieved her kids were at school at the time.
My kids, they usually ride their scooters out here. It's scary. really scary.
Liz Amy Tree, KRQE News 13.
Jackson says her brother got a lot of it on video on his tablet and that police took it as they continue to investigate what went wrong. Now, this was the 7th APD officer shot in the last 2 years, including yesterday. Two of them have been by friendly fire, and this is the 2nd APD officer shot in the past week. Police say Christopher Cook shot Officer Lou Golson twice during a DWI stop near San Mateo and Montgomery last Saturday morning. Cook was arrested Tuesday after 3 days on the run. Officer Golson is still at UNM Hospital recovering. News 13 found out he had another surgery yesterday. As we learn more on the officer's condition and uncover new information on what happened yesterday, we'll of course bring it to you on air, and you can see more online on this story at krqe.com. The New Mexico community showed officers support and appreciation yesterday, recognizing their sacrifices to protect and to serve. The first ever Law Enforcement Appreciation Day took place across the country. In Bosque Farms, the village decorated its main street in honor of officers. Children at the local elementary school wrote thank you notes and displayed them. Residents say they just wanted to show officers they're thankful for their service.
They care, they become part of our village. If there's anything going on, a death in our community, our police officers are amazing.
People were also asked to wear blue as a show of support. The FBI National Academy started this new tradition to thank officers. The victim of a shooting is now charged with shooting at the 2 suspects in his case. Angel Alfred Martinez was shot and wounded last month allegedly by his uncle, 38-year-old Fabian Ward Sr. and 32-year-old Thomas Olivas. The 2 men went to jail but were released on Wednesday when charges were dropped. Martinez then allegedly went and shot at the car they were riding in. Martinez now faces charges, and police tell us the charges against the other 2 have also been refiled. In San Francisco, police are investigating a shooting spree that killed 4 men. They were all found dead inside one car. Several homes in the area were hit by bullets in an apparent exchange of gunfire. Officers say they don't have any suspects or a possible motive for the shootings. And in Australia, more than 4,000 mourners attended a funeral service today for the 8 children found stabbed to death at a house. There were 4 girls and 4 boys, ranging from as young as 2 years old up to 14. One woman, Marcene Warrior, has been charged with murder. All but one of those kids were her own. State lawmakers will have less money to spend than they expected when the session starts in a week and a half, and you can blame low gas prices. Yesterday, powerful lawmakers from the Bipartisan Legislative Finance Committee said the state budget will go up by $140 million. They were expecting to have twice that to spend, but when gas prices plummeted, the state's oil revenues plummeted as well.
But in all my years here, this has been the most obscure future of what the revenues hold for us.
Almost 60% of the more than $6 billion budget goes to public education. The LFC is recommending most of the extra money this year go to schools and early childhood education, along with health care and law enforcement. 2 lemurs at the Rio Grande Zoo are recovering after they were attacked in their exhibit by another animal. This is video of when the lemur exhibit opened up back in 2012. Their exhibit is located next to the siamang ape exhibit. Officials say a male siamang named Brian broke into the lemur exhibit and bit 2 lemurs on the tail. Zoo staff separated the animals. The lemurs are at the zoo's vet office now. The zoo says this has never happened before, and the animals are no longer in the exhibits next to each other.